Have you ever felt like your mind won't switch off, your heart starts racing, and you don't even know why? Even though everything seems to be in order, something inside you remains on guard, as if your body were prepared to escape from a danger that doesn't really exist. That feeling has a name: anxiety. And when it increases, it becomes a silent storm capable of stealing all your calm in a matter of seconds. I know exactly how it feels because all of us at some point in life have experienced that weight of wanting to be okay, while at the same time not being able to control what's happening inside our own mind. And if you're here right now, it's not a coincidence. Probably a part of you was already tired of living in tension, looking for a way out, a way to breathe peacefully again, to reconnect with yourself. What almost no one understands is that this struggle is not new. Marcus Aurelius wrote about how to avoid being ruled by fear, even in the midst of wars and epidemics. Epictetus, who spent 30 years as a slave, discovered that a disciplined mind could be freer than any chained body. Seneca, surrounded by intrigues and uncertain situations in Rome, understood that true inner peace does not depend on what happens outside, but on the way we decide to respond to it. If they managed to find serenity in the middle of chaos, why wouldn't you be able to do it too? The truth is that peace does not come from the outside. It arises when you learn to master what is happening within you. In this episode, I want to share with you 10 Stoic teachings that can become your shield against anxiety. These lessons shaped their character and have inspired thousands of people throughout the centuries. And I sincerely hope that they also inspire you to transform your own path. But before we continue, I want to invite you to do something very simple. Write in the comments, "I am stronger than my anxiety." That phrase is not just a string of words, it is a decision. It's the first step to stop fighting your mind and start training it. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that sums all of this up perfectly. "Today, I escaped from anxiety." Or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my perceptions, not outside. Today, you can do exactly the same. And when someone reads your comment, they might find that same impulse to keep going. Because when one person decides to face what they feel, they encourage many others to do the same. Let's begin. Lesson 1. The dichotomy of control. You wake up. You grab your phone and notice that the message you were waiting for hasn't arrived. Your stomach tightens. Your mind starts creating 1,000 different scenarios. Did I say something I shouldn't have? Did they change their mind? Did I do something wrong? Without realizing it, your emotional state is already being managed by something you cannot control. This is how anxiety makes its way in, when we allow our peace to depend on factors that are beyond our reach. Epictetus taught that the mind loses its balance when it tries to grab what it cannot control. We want to decide what others think of us, anticipate what will happen, direct the course of events, even control the weather or how quickly someone replies to a message. But serenity is born in the exact moment in which you learn to separate what belongs to you from what belongs to the external world. Epictetus called this separation the great division of life. On one side is what depends on you: your judgments, your intentions, your attention, and your actions. On the other side is everything that is not under your command: other people's reactions, results, chance, time, and circumstances. Understanding that line is like turning on a lamp in a dark room. Fear shrinks, your mind regains clarity, and what once seemed huge becomes manageable. Imagine the following situation. You're waiting for an important response, and the silence on the other side feels like it's screaming in your face. You cannot control when that person will decide to answer you, but you can choose what you do while you wait. You can waste your energy checking your phone every 20 seconds, or you can turn that interval into something useful. Tidying your space, making progress on something that does depend on you, breathing deeply and continuing with your day. Another example. An interview is canceled at the last minute. You have no control over the cancellation, but you do have control over your reaction. You can lament, blame bad luck, and sink into frustration. Or you can use that extra time to review your presentation, adjust details, and prepare with more precision. The pattern is always the same. Let go of what does not depend on you and strengthen what actually is in your hands. This is the fundamental practice of Stoicism, and it also aligns with what modern psychology confirms. Cognitive behavioral therapy, considered one of the most effective techniques against anxiety, is based exactly on this principle. It is not events themselves that affect us, but the interpretation we make of them. Research shows that those who train this skill develop greater calm, resilience, and confidence when facing life's uncertainties. Every time you apply this principle, you are literally re-educating your brain to better face what you cannot control. So the next time you feel your mind racing, repeat silently, "This depends on me. The rest I let go." Make this phrase your daily anchor. And now think, in what situation this week can you apply this idea? What specific behavior depends solely on you? Remind yourself, "This depends on me and I act. The rest I simply let go." Lesson 2. Give value to the right things. Life works like a scale. On one side is the time that has been given to us. On the other, what we choose to place within that time. Sometimes, without realizing it, we turn simple situations into immense burdens. A poorly chosen word, a setback, a doubt that appears out of nowhere, and something that could have been light becomes a weight we drag inside our mind. When we do that, the scale tilts in the wrong direction. Time, which should be lived with attention, passes by without us making use of it, and what was small begins to feel like the center of the universe. Much of anxiety is born precisely there, in giving too much weight to things that in reality are temporary. When everything seems urgent, we forget that most of what keeps us up at night today will lose importance tomorrow. Seneca wrote, "Life is not short. We make it so when we waste time." And memento mori means exactly that. Remember that you are mortal, not so you feel fear, but so you can be free. When you remember how brief existence is, everything unnecessary loses strength. Imagine you are arguing with someone and you feel how anger rises in your chest, how your heart speeds up. If in that moment you ask yourself, "Will this matter in a year, even in a week?" part of the weight would dissolve. Because when the mind sees the real size of things, it understands what is worth keeping and what should simply be allowed to pass. Or think about that worry over a work detail that has been consuming you for days. When you remember that none of us has tomorrow guaranteed, that obsession starts to fall apart. What remains is what's essential: the pleasure of being present, the value of simplicity, the privilege of being able to do what you do well. Today, the practice of memento mori is like cleaning the glass of the mind. Suddenly, what was foggy becomes clear. It's not a gloomy practice, it is deeply liberating. By remembering death, you begin to look at life with more clarity. You truly start to live without exaggerating your fears and without constantly postponing what is important. Studies on the contemplation of impermanence show that reflecting on finitude reduces the tendency to exaggerate what is negative and increases the feeling of gratitude. Those who meditate on the brevity of time learn, almost without realizing it, to stop fighting against small frustrations and to focus on what really matters. That's why the next time anxiety tries to dominate you, remember this: time is limited, and calm is a decision. Life is too valuable and too urgent to waste it on what doesn't add anything. Ask yourself, what worry that torments you today would lose power if you remembered that life is short and deserves to be lived with lightness and presence? That simple act of recognizing it is already a step toward a life with more clarity and less fear. Lesson 3. Live in the present. Anxiety is like an overly taut rope. On one end is the past, which we no longer have any way of changing. On the other, the future, which has not yet arrived. And in the middle of that constant tension, we forget the only place where life truly happens: the present moment. Marcus Aurelius understood this almost 2,000 years ago. In his Meditations, he wrote that human beings torment themselves more over what they imagine than over real facts. He had already noticed what psychology today calls rumination and anticipatory worry, that habit of reliving again and again what has already happened and suffering over what has not even occurred yet. The anxious mind is like a traveler trapped between two trains, one that has already left the station and another that has not yet arrived. The key is to get off both and return to the only solid ground we have, the present. This very moment in which you are breathing is the only fertile ground for calm. Think about it. Almost always, what causes us anguish is not what is happening in this second, but what we imagine could happen. It's not last week's mistake that hurts, but the repetitive memory of that failure, spinning in your mind like an endless echo. Nor is it tomorrow that weighs on you, but the catastrophic script your mind invents about how it might turn out. When you cut that thread and return to the now, you discover something revealing. In this precise instant, almost always, everything is okay. You have air in your lungs. You have enough safety. You have resources to act. The present, taken on its own, is rarely unbearable. What hurts is the story we tell ourselves about it. Modern science backs up what the Stoics were already practicing. Research on mindfulness, or full attention, shows that training the mind to return again and again to the present reduces levels of cortisol, the hormone related to stress, and improves emotional balance. Nowadays, therapies based on this practice are used in hospitals and universities around the world to treat chronic anxiety. The Stoics did not use the word mindfulness, but the invitation was exactly the same. Return to what is within your reach today. Take care of your task for the day. Give your best where your feet are. Don't allow your mind to wander through places where you have no power to act. Next time anxiety drags you with thoughts like, "What if tomorrow?" or "I should have done it differently," stop. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is actually wrong in this exact moment? Most of the time the answer will be, nothing. And that's enough, because when you come back to the present, life comes back with you. Now I want you to reflect with me. If you trained your mind to return to the now every time it gets lost, what would change in your routine, in your relationships, in your inner peace? Write it in the comments, because your answer might become the reminder someone else needs to find the solid ground of the present again. Lesson 4. Practice discomfort. Anxiety grows stronger with the fear of losing what we have, or with the insecurity of not knowing how to act when something changes. However, the more we avoid any form of discomfort, the more vulnerable we become to it. In his letters, Seneca advised training both the mind and the body through small voluntary discomforts, occasionally sleeping on the floor, wearing simple clothing, eating only what is necessary, or giving up certain comforts for a time. He did not propose this as a punishment, but as a reminder that we need far less than we think to live fully. When you get used to receiving small doses of discomfort, the fear of losing decreases and anxiety begins to weaken. You discover that you can go through challenging situations and remain standing. Imagine, for example, that you decide to shower with cold water in the morning. Your body tenses, your mind resists, and for a few seconds everything in you wants to flee. But right after, you realize something important. You survived. The fear was bigger than the actual effect. Or think about spending an entire day without your phone. At first it feels strange, almost impossible. But with time, you notice the silence, the focus, and that lightness that appears when you don't depend on anything external to feel okay. These gestures, even if they seem small, have enormous power. They show you through action that you are stronger than you thought. Seneca said, "Train yourself so that what fortune can take away does not make you lack anything." When you learn to live with less, nothing external has the power to destabilize you. Many studies on gradual exposure to stress show that small doses of discomfort, practiced consciously and safely, strengthen the nervous system and increase resilience. It's just like training a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. Stepping out of your comfort zone is not just a motivational phrase. It's real mental training against fragility and fear. So start with simple actions. A day eating more basic food, a night without comforts, a morning without external distractions. These practices remind you that the essential is within you, not outside, and that you can go through any storm without breaking. You become emotionally strong when your stability and inner peace do not depend on anything external. And that is, without a doubt, the greatest freedom of all. Lesson 5. Use reason as your anchor. When anxiety dominates us, it's because the mind has lost its point of balance. Thoughts start running wild, creating scenes, stories, and threats that seem real but only exist in our imagination. Epictetus said that reason should function as a solid anchor in the middle of the storm. He wrote, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we have about them." This is one of the most liberating teachings in Stoicism. What generates anxiety in you is not the event itself, but the way you interpret it. Think of a simple example. You receive a short message from someone important. No emojis, no context, just direct. The anxious mind reacts instantly. Are they mad at me? Did I do something wrong? But reality could be much simpler. Maybe that person was busy and just wanted to reply quickly. When you learn to pause and calmly observe what you think, something starts to shift. Reason returns to the place fear had taken over. Ask yourself, do I have real proof of what I'm imagining? Or am I just filling in the gaps with my fears? That pause alone is enough to keep a baseless idea from growing into a full-blown episode of anxiety. Cognitive restructuring, one of the main tools in cognitive behavioral therapy, teaches exactly that. To question the truthfulness of automatic thoughts and replace them with more realistic interpretations. That simple act of reviewing your own narrative significantly reduces symptoms of anxiety and depression. When you step back from your thoughts and observe them clearly, it's like getting off the stage and sitting in the audience. You stop being the actor trapped in the drama and become the spectator who can see the story clearly. So next time anxiety tries to drag you, don't run after every thought as if it were an unquestionable fact. Stop. Review. Decide consciously whether it deserves your energy. Let your reason be an anchor, not a harsh judge, but a calm ally that returns control of your mind to you. That is the most powerful certainty. Not every thought has to become truth. Lesson 6. Accept the inevitable. One of the deepest roots of anxiety is resistance to what has already happened, or to what completely escapes our control. The mind wants to rule everything: the weather, people's moods, the direction of events. And when reality doesn't follow the plan we imagined, it gets restless, rebels, tries to impose itself, and ends up exhausted. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Love what happens to you and what is woven into your fate." This Stoic principle is known as amor fati, loving one's destiny. But this concept has nothing to do with resignation. It is pure wisdom. It doesn't mean accepting passively, but receiving the inevitable as a natural part of existence. When you do that, your mind calms down because it stops investing energy in battles it can never win. Let's think about something simple. You imagine spending the day outdoors and suddenly it starts to rain. The rain is a fact. It doesn't depend on your will. You can complain, get upset, and allow that change to ruin your day. Or you can accept what is and transform the scene. Read a good book, enjoy a coffee, listen to the sound of the rain on the roof. The event doesn't change, but your experience can change completely. The same happens with delays, unexpected losses, setbacks, and changes of plan. By accepting what cannot be altered, you reduce the tension that comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. And it's precisely there that anxiety begins to weaken, because it only grows when the mind insists on dominating what doesn't depend on it. Acceptance and commitment therapy, known as ACT, teaches this very principle. When you stop fighting what is inevitable and focus your energy on what can actually be changed, anxiety loses strength. Accepting is not giving up. It's repositioning yourself. It is choosing to act only where there is still a possibility of transforming reality. So next time something doesn't go as planned, remember this. You are not a victim of the situation. You're simply facing a new scenario. And that scenario, even if it's uncomfortable, can also become a path of growth. Life rarely follows our script, but it almost always gives us the lesson we need in that moment. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what inevitable situation can you accept this week in order to reclaim your calm and direct your energy better? Lesson 7. Do less, but do it better. You wake up and, even before getting out of bed, your mind is already saturated. You remember a message you still need to respond to, a task you left unfinished, a problem you still don't know how to solve. While you're brushing your teeth, you're already thinking about the email you have to send, the meeting that hasn't happened yet, and even what you're going to make for dinner. And when you realize it, the day hasn't even started and your head is already exhausted. Anxiety, most of the time, doesn't come from one big problem, but from the accumulation of small responsibilities piling up on your shoulders like invisible stones. We live in an era that glorifies excess, the full schedule, doing it all, being always available and answering immediately. But the human mind was not designed to carry 10 issues at once without breaking. When you do less but with real presence, something inside you settles. Your mind gets organized, your body relaxes, and the day feels livable again. Think about those days when you say yes to absolutely everything. You help with an extra project, answer messages as soon as they arrive, accept unnecessary meetings, and also try to attend to every notification that appears on your screen. At the end, your body is exhausted and your mind restless, as if you had done a lot and yet nothing had truly moved forward. Now imagine another version of the same day, but with focus. You choose 3 truly important tasks and do them one by one, without rushing, without interruptions. At the end, your mind feels light, your body calm, and the sensation is one of purpose, not exhaustion. That simple shift, trading quantity for quality, naturally reduces anxiety. Being multitasking raises cortisol levels, the stress hormone, and creates the false impression of constant urgency. On the other hand, focusing on one thing at a time lowers anxiety, increases mental clarity, and improves satisfaction with your results. In Stoic terms, living with fewer distractions is like walking with a compass instead of a map overloaded with paths. You know exactly where you are and in which direction you want to move. The essential becomes visible again. What's extra dissolves. Seneca said that whoever lives with wisdom always has enough time, and that truth remains intact even today. That's why the next time you feel like your day is overflowing, stop for a moment and ask yourself, what can I stop doing without my life losing value? Calm arises when you remove the excess and protect what truly matters. Now I want to ask you something. If you had to choose only 3 essential things to do tomorrow, what would they be? That small list could simplify your routine and maybe become your first step toward freeing your mind from unnecessary anxiety. Lesson 8. Control your inner dialogue. Imagine you're on your way to an important meeting. Your heart starts beating faster, and your mind begins throwing out those familiar sentences. What if I mess up? They're going to judge me. I'm not good enough. Those words don't come from the outside. They are born within you. That's how anxiety starts, when your own mind becomes your enemy. Marcus Aurelius wrote that life is what our thoughts make of it. He understood that the way we talk to ourselves determines how we react to the world. The mind can be a fortress or a prison. It all depends on the kind of inner dialogue you feed. Every time you repeat phrases like, "It's going to go badly," "I'm not enough," "I can't handle this," your body reacts as if you were really facing danger. Your breathing speeds up, your shoulders tense, your heart beats faster. But if you change the words, you also transform your inner state. It's not magic. It's biology. Imagine the same situation. You're about to present a project. An automatic thought appears. They're going to notice my mistakes. Your body responds immediately with nervousness. Now change the dialogue. I prepared for this. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to give my best. The external reality is exactly the same, but inside, something different happens. Your body calms down, your mind gets organized, and the fear loses intensity. Inner dialogue works like a filter. It doesn't change the facts, but it changes the way your nervous system interprets those facts. And this has scientific backing. In psychology, this process is called cognitive restructuring, the ability to reframe negative automatic thoughts. By changing your internal speech, you reduce activation of the amygdala, the brain area that triggers the fear response, and strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the region in charge of reasoning and calm. The Stoics were already teaching people to observe their thoughts as guardians of the mind and to consciously choose which ones deserve to stay. Because whoever masters their own inner dialogue stops living at the mercy of their emotions. So every time you notice your mind attacking you with anxious phrases, stop and change them. It's not about repeating empty affirmations, but about reminding yourself of what is true. You are capable, you are learning, and you have control over what you think. That is the foundation that keeps you steady even when everything around you tries to shake you. Now I ask you, what is the negative phrase your mind repeats most often, and how could you turn it into a phrase that brings you peace? That silent work inside your mind is where you truly reclaim control. Lesson 9. Practice gratitude. Have you noticed how the anxious mind only focuses on what's missing? You wake up and the first thing you think about is what you have to solve, the messages you haven't answered yet, what you still haven't achieved. It's as if your entire life were measured by what is absent. But no one can live in peace if their attention always points toward the void. Seneca said there is nothing more honorable than gratitude, because it gives us back the ability to see everything that is already enough. When anxiety takes control, your focus narrows. You only see risk, delay, and what went wrong. But when you practice gratitude, your mind opens again. You leave lack mode and return to fullness mode. Gratitude is not a spiritual accessory or just a pretty phrase. It is a deeply stoic tool to calm inner chaos and anchor the mind in the present. Imagine an ordinary day, traffic, difficulties at work, arguments at home, and the feeling that nothing is in its place. In that state, your body is here, but your mind is running unchecked between the past and the future. Now stop for a moment and look around you. Breathe. Choose 3 simple things you can be grateful for today. Maybe your health, the laughter of someone who loves you, a plate of warm food, or simply the chance to have one more day to try again. That simple gesture changes your brain chemistry. When you express gratitude, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin, the same neurotransmitters that produce calm and well-being. And research shows that people who write down 3 things they are grateful for each day significantly reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression, as well as sleep better and feel more optimistic. Gratitude doesn't erase problems, but it changes the angle from which you view them. It reminds you that even in the middle of storms, there is still solid ground to stand on, and it's precisely from that ground that serenity begins to grow. Try this tonight before you go to sleep. Close your eyes and choose 3 things that deserve your gratitude today. Maybe nothing has changed on the outside, but inside you will feel immediate relief, as if the weight of the day were getting lighter. Now I want to ask you, if you could only be grateful for one thing today, what would it be? When you recognize what you already have, even on the hardest days, you strengthen the certainty that there is always a reason to breathe more deeply and keep going. Lesson 10. Remember that you have survived before. Think about all the times you believed you wouldn't be able to go on, about that pain that seemed unbearable, the loss that left you without solid ground, that fear that felt bigger than you. And yet, you made it through every one of those experiences. You are here, listening to these words, with more strength and more awareness than you had back then. The anxious mind often deceives us. It convinces us that the current challenge is the worst of all, that this time there will be no good ending, that we no longer have the strength to continue. But there is a powerful antidote, remembering that you have survived before. Marcus Aurelius returned to this principle in the midst of wars and uncertainties. In his meditations, he wrote about the pains he had already endured, the losses he had faced, and the simple fact of still being alive. That memory grounded him. It was like looking back and seeing a path full of battles already won, silent proof that he was stronger than fear made him seem. You also have that path. Maybe you got through the end of a relationship, a debt that seemed impossible, a health crisis, a deep disappointment. Perhaps there was a moment when you thought you wouldn't be able to go on. But you did. The evidence is in your own story. If you survived before, you can do it again. Anxiety loses power when you remember everything you have already endured. That is the antidote. Looking back and recognizing that you faced even more intense storms, and that each one left you better prepared for the next. Modern psychology calls this the recovery of personal evidence, a common practice in therapies for anxiety. The patient writes down difficult moments they managed to overcome, to remember that pain is not permanent. This exercise reduces anticipatory fear and strengthens inner confidence. The Stoics were already doing this 2,000 years ago. They knew that lived experience is the best proof of inner strength. That's why the next time fear tries to convince you that you won't make it, look at your own past and repeat to yourself, "I've been here before, and I survived." That memory is your shield. Now I want to ask you, what was that difficulty you already overcame that today proves how strong you are? Anxiety doesn't disappear completely. It simply takes on new forms. It is part of life, but you decide what role it will play, whether it will be a prison or a lesson. The truth is that calm doesn't come from the outside. It begins when you choose to react differently. You cannot control everything that happens, but you can control how you respond to what happens. That power lives in every breath, in every thought you choose to feed, in every action you decide to take. Marcus Aurelius summed it up clearly. Today I escaped from anxiety, or rather I discarded it, because it was within me in my perceptions, not outside. He understood that the mind is the place where everything begins and where everything ends. And if he was able to find serenity in the midst of wars, you can also find it in the battles you are facing today. Today, nothing stops you from doing the same. Thank you for making it this far. If this episode helped you see things from a different perspective, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here we continue walking together, reflecting, growing, and strengthening our inner strength.